So there's a new buyer representation form out in California. What does that form look like? What does it mean? Well, stay tuned. Hi, I'm Theresa Wellman with Homeowner Experience Real Estate. And today we're going over the new California buyer representation and broker compensation agreement. This form is now required by law if you're going to buy a property that you have it signed with your buyer agent or buyer broker representative. So it's important to understand what this form means. And then we're going to highlight quickly some of the changes of what the prior form that wasn't legally required stated versus the form today. Now, I've been using this buyer broker or buyer representation form for quite some time, more than 2 years. But the changes that have been made are quite significant, and it is now legally required for all agents to use it. So it's going to be more prevalent out there. There's going to be more questions and more buyers seeing this form. So I wanted to go through it thoroughly so that you understand. So looking here at my screen, I want to quickly highlight a couple different things. The whole point of the BRBC, which stands for Buyer Representation and Broker Compensation Form, is to outline some key items. So 3 items that I want to quickly point out to you are: the first is that it highlights the fiduciary duty that the broker or agent has to the buyer to protect their interests. The second thing it does is it defines a relationship as one of exclusivity. Now, there is an option for non-exclusivity. We'll just talk about that. But most agents are going to want to work exclusively with you. And you can ask questions, of course, about that. And then the third major item is that it defines the fee that will be paid for working together. If you watched my previous video about the changes that have happened and the biggest reason to use this form is to really be clear and transparent about how your buyer agent is going to get paid, what your options are, and what they're going to do to cover and protect you and to work for you. Okay, so it's really important to have this form written out so that you have that visibility and you can make a choice as to what service level is right for you. So to highlight a couple of the changes, the old form was dated December 2022. The new form has been updated at the end of July 2024. So they all have always had dates. Any sort of contract or agreement needs to have a time frame on it, right? The prior form, there was no limit to what that time frame might be. The new form is legally by law limited to just 3 months, and it clearly shows that. We'll get into that. It obviously talks about the location, so whether that's county. Before, you used to talk about price range. They've taken that part out, but of course you need to define the location. It defines the buyer and broker's obligations, absolutely, both parties. It defines the broker compensation, absolutely. It has a box for exclusive or not. That's always been an option there. In the new form, not only do you got to check the box, you got to confirm and initial again. So they're making sure you really understand. One of the changes is that if there are any payments from the seller over what you've agreed upon with the buyer, that is not allowed to go to your broker. Before, there was a checkbox that you had to check to say that it doesn't go to the broker, but instead to the buyer. Now it's the default. It's not allowed for your broker to be compensated more than you've agreed upon in the agreement. And then it discusses things that the buyers have to detail and gives them an option to disclose if they have the money to pay their agent or not. And then it's more legible. Now, the form went from 3 pages to 5 pages, but they did add a lot more spacing so that it's easier to read and define the sections. They also put the first page as a full table with all the written in terms, and then you can go reference the paragraph on the following pages to understand the details if you're not familiar. So let's go ahead and take a look at the actual form to understand what I'm talking about. So here it is. You see it was revised in July 2024. It is called the Buyer Representation Broker Compensation Agreement, or the BRBC, like we mentioned before. You put the date that it's prepared, the buyer's legal names, the broker that you are working with. And then we're going to define the representation period or the time frame. And it says clearly here, not to exceed 3 months. If it does, it is going to be invalidated. So that is a big deal. And then it can be non-exclusive or exclusive. The difference is non-exclusive is the broker has to do certain things to define that they represent you on a particular property, where exclusive means no matter the situation, we don't have to prove cause, all the different things. It's basically that agent is representing you and no matter what you purchase. It defines property types and locations. The biggest difference, another one, is that you can exclude properties from representation. For example, I've worked with a couple buyers who maybe saw a property with one agent and then decided to go find the right agent for themselves and sign an exclusive agreement. If they had broker cause at the prior property, we can exclude that particular property going forward so that there's no overlap of the two different brokers and compensation. So the amount of compensation would be listed here. In the San Jose area, 2.5% is fairly standard. But again, the whole point of this form is that buyers have visibility into what they're getting. So if you're an experienced buyer and you just need a little bit of guidance, for example, to write the contract or to understand a little bit about disclosures, you may want a different level of service than a first-time home buyer who needs complete guidance and education on properties and the process and the vocabulary and all the parties that come together. So you as the buyer, depending on where you are in that scale, pick the right service that is for you. And there's going to be agents out there offering all kinds of different levels of service. I think this is one of the really positive parts about this change is that now you have visibility and transparency into what you're getting, what you need, and what the cost is going to be. Hey guys, my name is Theresa. I am so sorry for interrupting this video. If you've been enjoying this content, please like and subscribe as it really helps out my channel. And if you're looking to move to San Jose or have any questions about moving or the area in general, I would love to connect. I really enjoy talking with our YouTube viewers and I'm so happy to help. Check out my contact information in the description below. Now let's get back to the video. So this is a huge, really big positive part. Talks about payment. So this clearly says here, broker shall not receive any amount in excess of what's written in 2E1, which is where it says the compensation. So if you agree with your agent to be only paying 2%, then the seller offers 2.5%. They don't get the broker, the buyer's agent does not get that extra 0.5%. It actually would then be excess in escrow that you could use for closing costs or however it may be. Or you can use that as a negotiating factor in your offer to make your offer more attractive. You know, just one-on-one basically is how you're going to figure out the negotiation with the seller and lock in that payment. And let's see here, some other items I want to highlight. There's other financial considerations. You can always cancel these agreements. If it's an exclusive agreement, the cancellation is 30 days after receipt of notice. Otherwise, there would be a type in here of what it might be. Then here is where the buyer can define whether or not they have sufficient funds to pay the broker, or if they intend to use a loan product that does or does not have it, you know, and what your options are, your agent can guide you. But basically, you can be negotiating with the seller on that and decide what's the best way based on your financial situation to be able to compensate your agent. Again, giving you full transparency and full options to be able to negotiate that. All right, so here is the broker right to compensation. It talks about whether it's exclusive or non-exclusive and what happens. Now, if it's non-exclusive, it says a compensation is payable only if there was broker involvement. So what is broker involvement? Well, it's defined right here. They showed you the property. They showed it to you virtually. They submitted a signed offer for you. They did a market analysis for you. They introduced you to the property and you went and saw information about it. So there's all these different things called broker involvement that would define whether that agent would be compensated for that transaction. Again, if it's exclusive, we don't have to worry about all those little details and terms. And it's just more that you're working with that agent no matter what for that time period that you set. All right, so let's skip down to timing of compensation. As you can see, though, this form is pretty easy to read. It's very detailed. And again, these letters here correlate to the paragraphs down below. Section E2 correlates to paragraph 4B. So 4B, you go and read here about broker compensation, right? So it is easy to read and correlate, and even though it's 5 pages, they made it much more legible, which is nice. So timing of compensation, here's an important part as well. Upon completing any transaction and through escrow, broker shall be entitled to compensation. So basically what this says is when you close the purchase and close escrow, your broker will be paid at that time. And any payment should be put in through escrow and handled that way. And, you know, if acquisition is prevented by the buyer, you still owe compensation. And it goes into more details there, but payment through escrow. So it says you assign this agreement from buyer's funds in escrow, and buyer agrees to submit to escrow any funds needed to compensate broker under this agreement. Payments received from others. So buyer broker should discuss whether it would be beneficial to include a term in any offer buyer makes obligating the seller to pay the broker directly or through escrow for some or all of the compensation. So what this means is that if the seller is offering concessions as some sort of compensation, you're going to document that the seller is going to pay for X amount, whether that's 100% of what you agreed to pay your agent or a part of it. You will define that so then it's clear to escrow how much money would need to be brought into escrow to pay for your agent, which could be zero, right? It could be 1%, 0.5%, whatever the shortage might be, there's going to be variables there. But it says if the seller does not pay, then you can go after them, right? Based on that information. And it says the broker will disclose the final compensation broker receives from anyone other than the broker to help you with your obligation to pay your broker. And then again, it goes into cancellation. We can cancel that anytime. I highlighted that. If it's exclusive, it's 30 days. You'll see that it talks more about different properties and conflicts and kind of things to define the relationship. But here it says what the broker is going to do. So the broker agrees to exercise reasonable effort and due diligence to achieve the purposes of this agreement. Broker will assist the buyer locating and presenting selected properties to the buyer, presenting offers, assisting buyers in negotiating any terms such as acceptance or facilitating the escrow process for such accepted offers. It also says that we will help buyer order reports and investigations, schedule and attend meetings and appointments. We will also provide buyer a list of professionals to perform services if there is such a requested list. In my case, I absolutely have that requested list of resources that I can provide for you and help you connect with people for repairs or upgrades. And then we will assist the buyer in finance process by making referrals to lenders known to the broker. And basically keeps going in that we should communicate any disclosures or material facts, that we will do an agent visual inspection to flag any items based on our experience that maybe you should investigate further. And we're in compliance of all federal, state, and anti-discrimination laws. Then it also talks about the buyer obligations. There's 3 points here. To timely view, consider property selected by the broker, to negotiate in good faith to acquire a property, and buyer further agrees to act in good faith toward the completion of any contract entered into a property. So basically saying be serious, move forward. If this is your intent, follow through. If you're, not quite keen on a property, then don't move forward on that. Let's communicate and move on, right? So buyer shall provide any relevant personal financial information to the agent, such as proof of funds, pre-approval letter, etc. At the beginning, it says within 5 days. Sometimes I find that I'm making those referrals. It's going to take a little bit more than that, maybe 2 weeks. But, getting that initial paperwork off to the lender is dictated here in this so that you show that you're financially capable in order to purchase a property. Page 4 is a lot of different details about attorney fees and dispute resolutions. I'm not going to go into that. Of course, you can read that detail. But what I do want to say is buyer is obligated and agrees to read all documents provided to the buyer. Buyer agrees to seek assistance from appropriate professionals selected by the buyer and also referenced in the buyer investigation advisory. So that means if you're doing inspections or you need to do additional inspections, the broker says, then you really should seriously consider that advice and look into it further. And then buyer is advised to read the buyer investigation advisory and list any concerns that they might have and highlight that up to the broker. Okay, so then really it goes into this entire agreement is written. And then if it's exclusive representation, you have to confirm again here that you are accepting exclusive representation by an additional initial. There's also confirmation of compensation, repeated, and then it's signatures. Entity buyer would be if you have a trust or something you want to purchase in, that would be filled out here. Otherwise, you just sign your name, the broker signs, and that is the end of the form. So I hope this explains the details of the form. It shows you that it's really not that intimidating. It's actually quite enlightening for you to really understand what's important, how much you're paying your agent, what they're going to compensate or do for you. I encourage you to have a meeting or a buyer consultation with the agents that you're looking to hire to really define exactly more what they will do on your behalf, because this is a very general California form as what an agent does, but each agent does a lot of more detailed pieces to help you with that. And you want to have a good understanding. Again, remember, the whole point of this is to be transparent, to be clear up front, to know what services you're getting and what you're paying for them so that you can move forward in finding the right house for you. If you'd like to ask any more questions, you see something that you're not sure about in this agreement, please comment below. And if you'd like to have an initial conversation to start talking about the services I offer for buyers, book a 15-minute call at the link below. I would love to discuss your home buying plans in the San Jose area. I'm Theresa Wellman, Homeowner Experience Real Estate. Thank you for joining me.